The great house at Collinwood in the year 1995. After escaping from parallel time, Barnabas Collins and Julia Hoffman discovered a Collinwood in ruins, the result of some mysterious disaster which occurred in 1970. The spirit of the evil man who reigns over the ruined house has possessed Julia Hoffman and forced her to betray Barnabas Collins' secret to the local authorities. But Barnabas has rescued Julia, and now the two are looking for a way out of the house, and hopefully out of this time.
Julia. Julia! Come sit in this chair. You'll be all right. Just relax. Sit down. Julia, you'll be all right. You'll be all right.
Who are you? What is wrong? Who are you?
We don't know how you helped us, but we want to thank you.
Helped you?
Don't be afraid of us.
Who are you? What are you doing here?
Barnabas, her dress. Her dress, it's not the same.
That's right. And she can't be the same girl we saw in the playroom.
I'm going to tell Mrs. Stoddard you're...
No, wait. Please, you mustn't be afraid of us, believe me.
Who are you?
I'm Barnabas Collins, and this is Dr. Hoffman.
I've heard them talk about you.
Did you say that Mrs. Stoddard was here in this house?
Yes, of course.
Is it possible, Julia, that we traveled through time while we were on those stairs?
I don't know, Barnabas. Young lady, what year is this?
Don't you know?
I know it may seem very strange to you, but we've just had a very frightening experience. Even if we explained it to you, you wouldn't be able to understand.
It's 1970.
Barnabas, we're back! I don't know how it happened, but here we are.
Neither do I understand. But at least we're back in time to try and prevent what's going to happen.
I don't understand anything you're saying.
Tell us who you are and how long you've been at Collinwood.
My name is Hallie. Hallie Stokes.
Are you any relation to Professor Stokes?
He's my uncle. My parents were killed in an accident, and he brought me here. Mrs. Stoddard invited me to stay at Collinwood.
Well, you better take us to her or to Roger Collins. We have a great deal to tell them.
But Roger's in Europe. I know Mrs. Stoddard is downstairs.
Elizabeth,
Gwen, what's the matter?
I've been to the East Wing.
You went to the room again?
Yes, and this time I saw something happening.
What was it?
The room changed while I was standing in the doorway. There'd obviously been a fire because the room was filled with smoke. There was a young girl wandering around the room, calling out for Barnabas.
Calling for Barnabas?
Yes.
You know who she was?
No, I never saw her before.
Was there no sign of Julia or Barnabas?
None. I tried to communicate with the girl, but I couldn't.
Quentin, do you think it's possible that Julia and Barnabas were trapped in the fire?
That's the only conclusion that I can come to. And if it's true, Elizabeth, then we shall never see them again.
Elizabeth, Quentin, we've returned. Found out too late that Stokes had set fire to the house. But when we tried to get out, we found the corridor in flames. And then the room changed.
We were afraid that you were both lost in the fire.
Quentin, how did you know about the fire?
Quentin saw the room change. He said it was filled with smoke.
When did you see this?
Right after Julia and you got here.
But that's not possible.
Why not?
The fire occurred over a week ago.
Barnabas, are you telling us that the room changed over a week ago with you and Julia in it?
Yes.
And where have you been?
Well, that's the incredible part of our story. You see, Julia and I found ourselves transported to the future, to the year 1995.
1995?
Barnabas.
Oh, it's true. We were there, and the two of you must listen to what happened to us.
Unless something is done very soon, we're going to find there's going to be a disaster here, right here at Collinwood.
Catastrophe? What are you talking about?
After we left the West Wing room, we came downstairs to the foyer. We found the house in ruins. The beams from the ceiling had collapsed. The floors were covered with leaves. There was no power at all. The house was in a complete shambles.
We couldn't imagine what had happened. The entire place was deserted. We went to the cemetery and we saw Mrs. Johnson. She was putting flowers on David's grave.
David's grave?
Yes, according to the tombstone, David had died in 1970.
Both must have imagined this.
Elizabeth, you must listen. We don't have very much time to prevent what's going to happen.
Time for what?
Well, we just have a very short time before something happens here, a disaster.
Barnabas, exactly what do you think's going to happen?
I wish I knew. Julia and I found everything and everyone so completely changed in the future. Everyone either unable to tell us or unwilling to tell us what had caused the catastrophe.
Who else did you see there?
Carolyn, Professor Stokes, and you, Quentin. Everyone else had disappeared mysteriously.
And I wasn't able to tell you what happened?
No, Quentin. We discovered that you had been in a mental institution. You didn't know what had happened. Neither did Stokes. The only person that we felt knew anything was Carolyn.
And she refused to tell you?
Carolyn was in a very strange state mentally. She had somehow managed to block out the memory of whatever had happened.
Towards the end, she began to remember.
Towards the end? What do you mean?
She died of fright. Right here in this room.
Sounds so terrifying. I can't believe it really happened.
Barnabas, now look, when you and Julia made the transition from parallel time to this time, now, isn't it possible that you experienced some kind of hallucination?
We both couldn't have imagined it. And we have those few clues, remember?
Just before she died, Carolyn managed to scribble a note. She said that there were 6 events that led to the catastrophe. One of them, she mentioned a place called Rose Cottage. Have you ever heard of such a place around here?
Rose Cottage? I've never heard of it. I don't believe there is such a place. At least, not near Collinwood.
Do you know the date when the fire occurred?
I do. I remember seeing the calendar at Inspector Hamilton's office. It was August 3rd.
That's what I thought. Today happens to be August 3rd.
No, it can't be.
But it is. You think that a week has passed when actually not even one night has passed.
I don't understand it. But whatever the explanation is, I still believe the experience we had was real. And we had all better do something about it before it's too late.
Did you find anything?
No mention of any names we heard.
Elizabeth found these 2 volumes covering the first half of the 19th century.
How is she?
Oh, she's still upset, I'm afraid.
Julia, do you think it was wise of us to tell Elizabeth and Quentin about the future?
Barnabas, they're going to be a part of it. We had to tell them, no matter how disturbing it is for them.
Well, maybe Quentin was right. Maybe we did imagine it.
We couldn't have. It was too real. Even now, I can almost still feel that presence of evil. I can still see Gerard's face vividly in my mind. We were there, Barnabas. And somewhere back in time, those spirits existed as living human beings.
Julia, I found one of the names.
Which one?
Daphne. Daphne Herridge.
What does it say about her? What was she?
She was governess to the Collins in 1840.
Yes, what else?
Well, that's all there is. But at least it's a beginning. I'm going to the cemetery.
What for?
Well, she was Daphne's spirit. When we saw her, she looked as she did when she died. She was quite young. I want to find out just how young.
I'll come with you.
Who is it?
Hallie, may I come in?
Yes. Hallie, it's past your bedtime, isn't it?
I've got to talk to you, Quentin.
Why? You have trouble?
Yes, but I don't know what it is.
Come on, you're going to have to do better than that.
You know those strange feelings I get sometimes?
Yes?
Quentin, those 2 people who came back to Collinwood today.
Barnabas and Julia?
Yes. Do you think... What I mean is... Are they good people?
Now, you've seen them. What do you think?
I don't know. When I first met them in the West Wing, I was frightened by them.
Hallie. You met them in the West Wing?
Yes, why?
Are you sure that's where you found them?
Positive. I guess the reason I was frightened was the way they looked at me and talked to me.
What do you mean?
Look, they said things that made me think that they'd seen me someplace before. And I know I've never seen them before. But then when I brought them downstairs, I had the awful feeling that something terrible was going to happen. Soon.
Now look, now you listen to me. Barnabas and Julia are very fine people. And you don't have to be afraid of them. Or of anything else. And you believe that. Now just what were you doing in the West Wing?
I don't really know. I was sitting in my room and suddenly I had the feeling I had to go to the West Wing. And I have no idea why.
She was 23 years old.
But she didn't die a natural death, Barnabas, because her spirit is not at rest.
Julia, if we could find out how and why she died, at least we'd be making some progress.
Barnabas, we've already learned more than I ever hoped to. Look, who's buried next to her.
Come in.
Johnson said you wanted to see me.
Yes. Barnabas, when you were telling us the story downstairs, you left out one very important detail.
There was so much to tell. I left some of it out. Several things. One thing about you.
What was that?
Well, when we finally found you, you hadn't aged at all. You looked exactly like you do now. Obviously, your portrait hadn't changed.
Well, I don't know whether that's something to look forward to or not. Anyway, Barnabas, when you told us the story, I was convinced that you had imagined your experience in the future. Now I don't know.
Well, what was the detail I left out?
Well, when you returned from parallel time or the future, you should have came back through the East Wing. Now, Hallie just told me that she discovered you in the West Wing.
That's right.
Well, do you have any notion how you got there?
None whatever.
Now, listen to me. Have you said very much to the girl?
No, Julia and I felt that she wouldn't understand.
Good, because I don't want her to know anything that you've told Elizabeth and myself. She's a very sensitive child. She frightens quite easily.
I understand that her parents died quite recently.
About 6 months ago. She was living with relatives, and Stokes brought her here. We've become very fond of her.
Well, you have my word that I won't say anything to her.
Good, I thank you. Now, about your return. You don't have any idea whatsoever how you got where you were.
All I can tell you is that we were in a children's playroom off the West Wing corridor.
Now, wait a minute. There's no playroom there, and there never has been.
Well, that's the way I felt too, Quentin. But that's the room that led us to the West Wing corridor. Julia and I were in it. We didn't know how we were going to get out, and then Hallie disappeared. Well, she appeared. Hallie? Well, actually, it was the ghost of Hallie. You see, in the disaster that is coming, Hallie is supposed to have died too.
Go on.
Well, the spirit guided us to a door that hadn't been opened a moment before. We went through it and found a strange staircase. And then we found another door that led us to this corridor. And then Hallie appeared again. Only this time she was alive. That's when we knew that we had got back.
Fantastic as it all seems. I'd be willing to believe it. But a playroom just doesn't exist.
Well, I will prove to you that it does. Now come with me.
Tell me, Hallie, have you enjoyed your stay at Collinwood?
Yes, very much.
Has the house changed much since you arrived?
I don't understand what you mean.
A house like this doesn't stay the same. Things happen to it, sometimes strange things.
The house has always seemed very peaceful to me.
I'm glad to hear that. Tell me, Hallie, have you ever heard of a place called Rose Cottage?
Rose Cottage? No, I haven't. I'd better go. It's time for me to go to bed.
All right, Hallie. Good night.
Night, Dr. Hoffman.
Julia and I came out of that door. It leads to the playroom.
I'm afraid you're in for a dismal disappointment.
Don't understand. I swear this was the door.
I don't understand either, Barnabas. But there is no playroom. And it's not conceivable that there could have ever been a playroom here, because on the other side of the wall is the outside. Now you're satisfied.